Mr.
Hello.
Louw,
Hey, John, how's it going?
what a great honor and a privilege to finally actually see your face and meet you properly.
Cool, likewise. Likewise.
Are you
Nice
in
to
the
see you.
studio right now, or are those blinds behind you?
No, I'm in my lounge at
Oh,
home.
it looks like a diffuser.
Oh.
Oh,
No, they're just wooden blinds.
how are you and where are you?
I am in Camps Bay. We came down a couple of days ago.
Nice. And do
So
you live here partially?
yeah. I'm usually when it's not the lockdown thing. So in March last year, we went to that remote place that we've got up near Storms River. And we
Cool.
basically stayed there until now.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it's been great.
Well, lovely to have you on What's Your Poison? Got to start with the big questions. What you
Yeah.
drinking?
Oh, this is a Dalwhinnie.
I love Delwhinnie.
Me too.
Mm.
It's my favorite.
I am trying tonight an Irish whiskey called Peaky Blinder.
Okay, like the show. Yeah.
Well, I think I assume they stole the idea from the show. They're like, hey, we've got this Irish whiskey. There's this cool show. Let's steal the name. But
Yeah.
I'm excited to give it a go. And lovely to be having a whiskey with you.
Awesome. Yeah, likewise.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Mm.
Have you tried Bob Dylan's whiskey, Heaven's
Heaven's
Gate?
Door. You can't get it here.
Oh.
I've been looking at it, and the guys Whiskey Brother who do all the cool distributions here, they don't have it, and I wish they would get it because it's something I'm keen on
sure
finding.
Mm.
I'll say this: the only thing that irks me is that do you remember his podcast that he had? He had this fucking amazing podcast called
Radio.
Yes, the radio one. What was it called again? Oh.
It's like Family Hour Radio or something like that.
That's it. Radio. Yeah. Bob Dylan's. Let me just quickly Google it. Radio Hour.
Yeah.
Radio Hour. It's called Bob Dylan's Theme Time Radio Hour, right?
Yeah.
Now he dropped one episode recently to launch the whiskey, which was cool.
Yeah.
And the episode is absolutely outstanding, as all of his episodes are. I mean, that radio theme time hour is one of the greatest pieces of radio of all time, right?
I had a CD.
You got the CD even.
They felt CDs, like 5 CDs.
I know this is really like overly puristic of me. I just felt a bit cheap the way he dropped that episode and how he dropped the Heaven's Door into it. Just felt like, oh, this is just a little kind of money making. Yeah, I just felt like a cheap bit of marketing. If he'd continued with the show or done some more things, but it was just like someone went to him. I felt like someone had gone to him and said, look, we're going to pay you $1 million, endorse this whiskey, do this one theme time thing. We're rich. And that was the only thing. That's the only thing that's put me off it. But I completely injected all my own crap into that. That might not be the situation at all.
Well, I just sent Kevin a bottle of Balvenie 19-year-old.
You said that
to Kevin Shirley. Yeah.
Oh, you just sent on to Kevin.
Yeah, and he's been loving it.
Let's talk about Kevin. Well, first of all, I just want to start by saying that track, Train Don't Run, is off the chain. I mean, it is.
Thank you. I love it too.
What is going on in that song? It sounds like you've got both Mark Knopfler and wow, I just lost his name. Pink Floyd, David Gilmour's. Both of them are on that track.
Yeah, they are, and it's funny you should say that because my buddy sent the track to Dave Matthews, and that's what he said. It sounds like "Man's Too Strong" of Brothers in Arms. So
yes,
and that solo.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, the man's too strong. He said that, and the guitar solo is very Gilmour-esque. Yeah. It's a great
So
song.
tell me about your
Kevin's
relationship with Kevin and how you ended up making this album.
Well, we met in the early 80s. We both had bands gigging in clubs in Cape Town, like Goodwood, anywhere there was a club. He had a band called The Council, and I had a band called All Night Radio. So we would meet up, before gigs, after gigs, drink whiskey together. And he was always obsessed with recording. And he's a very creative guy, and he'd been in the SABC for a year. Then he came down and said to Tali Makali he wants to work with him. And Tali said, well, I don't have a job. So he said, well, I'm going to stay here on your studio floor till you give me a job. And he said, okay, well, then paint the studio. And basically got in with Tali and started making albums. And we made our first album in 1984, All Night Radio, which he really liked. And we made the second All Night Radio I made with him in 1986. And that's where it started. And we've made 6 albums together since then, over 35 years.
And you've kept it. I mean, he lives over there. He doesn't come much. He doesn't come back here much, as far as I understand.
He's only been, so he left in August of 1986, and he's only been back once to make the Springbok Nude Girls album.
And how did he coax you out of the shadows and back into the light?
He phoned me up and said, Stevie, when are you going to make another record? I said, I don't know. Who cares? Nobody cares anymore. He said, listen, you've got to just commit. I'm going to be in Nashville the last 3 days of February 2020, and this was in February 2019, and I'm going to see you there. So just buy your ticket and see me there, and we're going to make an album. And he just put the phone down. And I said, okay, cool. And then I had kind of committed, and I didn't want to go back on my word. And he said,
did you have an album in you at that time?
Well, I had songs, and I said to him, I don't know about the songs, and I don't know if they're good enough. And, I've just played them to myself, and I don't know, He says, listen, you've got songs, and he said a great thing. He said, you're going to write more before I see you. and crazily enough, I wrote Train Don't Run in like around the 20th of December in Vancouver, Canada, 2019, and we recorded it basically 2 months later.
Wow.
And it was crazy because I'd gone to Canada. I don't really like traveling with a guitar and checking it in. So I went to the guitar store there and I tried out a whole lot of guitars. And there was a small little Martin guitar. It was an inexpensive Martin, kind of factory made in China. But it wasn't a full-bodied guitar, and it wasn't a travel-size guitar. It was like a 3-quarter guitar. And it just had this special voice. And I went back to the hotel room and I wrote that song.
Funny how guitars have personalities like that.
They really do. My friend, and I've collaborated with him for 40 years, Willem Moller, who's been in a lot of South African bands, had this beautiful Epiphone from 1965. Just like the John Lennon, George Harrison, Paul McCartney Epiphones, or a Sunburst Epiphone. And I swapped him to my guitars for the Epiphone, and I took it with me to lockdown. And a lot of songs came out of that guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it so interesting. I watched the Steve Louw podcast with Bruce Springsteen when he made Letter to You. And a really interesting story, he said he was on Broadway doing that solo show. And a kid came up to his van as it was pulling away and knocked on the door. And he found, and in an Italian accent, said, Mr. Springsteen, I want you to have this guitar, and gave him this beautiful classical guitar, basically from Italy. And he had it with him in the lounge, and he started playing it, and he wrote most of the songs on Letter to You on that guitar. I mean, he has
I totally get it.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than sort of going into a shop and then finding some really magnificent guitar and sitting down and suddenly being able to write really amazing stuff, but then you go home and you can't carry on your guitar at home.
But it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
It's interesting that guitars, I really do feel that they do have a voice.
I'll tell you something really interesting is that my acoustic guitar here, I've been very lazy because I don't really play anymore. But
Mm,
my kid's been messing about with it, and it's only has 4 strings on it now,
mm,
and I haven't bothered to change to. And since it's had 4 strings, I've been writing more than I've written in years because it just
mm.
feels different, and it's like voicing something interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what's cool. If you tune a guitar into a tuning that you don't really know, and just put your fingers anywhere, and you don't know actually where you're fretting the chords, when you start
Yeah.
fretting really weird chords,
Mm.
diminished and augmented chords, and if you watch Joni Mitchell playing, she plays in all these open tunings, and that's what makes her stuff so interesting. She's got a really rhythmic right hand, and then she's just fretting with her left hand, sliding and a few things. But the chords she makes are very complicated, jazzy chords.
I read this. This is part of the Jeff Buckley mythology. I struggle to believe it because it's so brilliant, but this is what I read, and it's always stuck with me that he would do a couple of gigs a night in his early days. The story of Jeff Buckley going to his room for like 2 years and coming out. I mean, he was amazing, but he used to play different gigs at different venues, but he'd play the same songs at different venues in different keys with different tunings.
Yeah,
So he'd do one at the one, and then he'd tune the guitar differently in a different voice, and go to another, and like reinterpret his own song
yeah,
twice or 3 times in a night. I mean, that's just bananas.
yeah. And it's very interesting when if you use a capo, it
Yeah.
just changes it changes the length of the
Mm,
strings,
mm.
so it changes the vibration of the strings, and it sounds so different.
Yeah.
And I think that was the interesting thing on Train Don't Run. I used a capo and that 3/4 size guitar. But it was interesting. It's got those big chords, those da 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 da. And I've never really written something like that in acoustic guitar before. And it wasn't, it was kind of a big band, majestic thing. And I actually said
Mm.
to the band, it's weird. I've never written something like this. But they said, no, it's cool. Let's do it. We know what you mean. And I was
Really
glad when
cool.
they did. And what was so cool, we recorded in this great studio, which had a great old 70s analog Neve console, which is basically the same console as they used on Dark Side of the Moon. And Kevin was so excited. When you record the song, you've got to get the balance up of the band. So you're kind of mixing the song and you get the levels of the band, and you're adjusting all the time as the musicians are playing. And Kevin liked the song so much that he mixed it while we were performing it. And he said, "Look, I'm just going to mix it, so we've got it, and that's the final song." So the final song is the performance.
Yeah. Basically telling me that Kevin's really lazy. That's what I heard.
No,
No,
he's
no, I'm
just
joking. I was totally
really,
joking.
really smart.
No, I was totally joking.
And I watched him, and I never realized before. I don't know why this time I did. How hard he has to concentrate on so many things. Like he has to concentrate on the song, the sounds, each different person's sound, the acoustic guitar, the drums, how they all balance together, the actual performance, the key, the tempo, then technical stuff, and then mixing and balancing all at once. And then the mood of the people, and are people not like, have we not done this one too many and everybody's getting a bit like sick of it?
Mm.
Or let's have a break and have a cup of coffee, or go for lunch and come back and then we'll do one more. All that stuff. It's all going on at once.
It's a magical talent to be able to do that.
Yeah, and it takes a
And
lot of practice. I mean, he told me that,
you
he's
also have to
big.
deal with people.
Well, that's the thing, and that is his skill. He's
Yeah.
really, he's a very honest person, and he's very good with people, and he can get the best out of people. And his break was Silverchair in Australia, where A&R guy heard the song in Australia and took it back to the States, and it just took off.
Mm.
And from that, he was basically tossed in to remaking Aerosmith's Nine Lives album. They made the album, and Sony had rejected it, and that John Kaludna said to Kevin, "You're going to do it." And he had to walk into that studio as how old would he have been? In 95. He was 30, early 30s. And Aerosmith like, we don't want to be here with you. We don't want to make a record with you. And he pulled it off. 3 weeks later, he had the album, and it sold like 5 million copies.
It's mad. My kid, who is 6, is an Aerosmith nut.
Oh,
and
really?
That's his album. That's the one for him.
Yeah. Kevin did a good job.
Yeah, he told me because I spoke to him thanks to you.
Yeah.
He told me I don't believe it yet, so that we're gonna do a whole episode on that Aerosmith album. He said he's got stories on top of stories just around that album.
I'm sure he has, because he told me he got like a whole skin rash from stress.
Jesus. Yeah. Well, I hope that happens.
They're intense personalities,
and also at the height of their, I mean, that's sort of their they must have been at their most difficult at that time as well.
I would think so. Yeah. And I think there was the health problems and all that stuff.
How did you, early on you mentioned, you just send your tracks to Dave Matthews to listen to. How do you know Dave Matthews?
I don't, but my friend does, who's an artist, and they were at school together. And he just WhatsApped him the track, and Dave was kind enough to give his opinion.
That's cool.
After we'd made the album, I had to get a deal with, I didn't have my distribution deal had expired, so I had to get a new distribution deal after I'd made the record already. So I was trying to get pointers in that direction.
And you have released it independently. It's doing really well. I mean, the single is doing phenomenally well.
Yeah. Well, luckily, I had a champion at Sony in South Africa, Guy Henderson, and he left Sony in 2002. And then all the people I knew at Sony kind of left, and I put out my last album through them in 2007, 2008. But Guy went to the UK and became, he's the head of Sony International Music Publishing. So he's kind of the second in charge. And I sent him the album, and he put me in touch with their New York office, who put me in touch with the New York label that I've got. Yeah.
Good job. You're doing amazing stuff. I mean, when I spoke to you, were just like, I've got this album, I don't know what to do with it. And now look at you.
It was my first Teams meeting with Guy. He's like, his secretary was like, Guy wants to have a Teams meeting with you. I'm like, what's that?
What's Teams?
And I was stressed that I had to do this with you because my browser is Safari, and it's like, it doesn't support StreamYard. So
I forgot about that. That's the only weird thing.
Yeah, I had to download Google Chrome and like drag it into applications, but I was doing it like at 5 to 9, but it all worked out.
Sorry about that. I forgot. I should have told you that. My bad.
Yeah, it's so good. It's no problem.
Can we go back a few? I mean, I want to go to the Big Sky days. I mean, and you were doing such amazing stuff there in those days, and also, it was around the kind of politically charged days as well. Can you tell me a bit about those times?
Well, Waiting for the Dawn, which was the first album that I put out under the label Big Sky, we recorded it just as a project, and then I had to figure out a name to put it out under, and I recorded with a great bunch of guys who I'd met in Johannesburg. They had a band called Image, and very great musicians. Don Larker, who's had many successful albums. Jimmy Mngwandi, who went to New York and is a very successful bass player in New York. Godfrey Mkinga, a great drummer. And on sax, we had McCoy Mkhubata.
Oh, wow.
Crazy enough.
He was in Big Sky.
Well, he's on the album, and he toured with me, yeah.
He must have been a kid.
Let's think. Yeah, he was in his 20s. Yeah. So he's the sax on Waiting for the Dawn and Slow Dancing and Diamonds and Dirt.
Right.
He's a great player. And he called me a few days ago. such a sweet guy. Yeah.
Great human being that.
Yeah. And that was the band. And then we overdubbed other musicians. And yeah, it was a politically charged time. Waiting for the Dawn is obviously a political song, Diamonds and Dirt. We did a cover on Kevin's recommendation of Tom Robinson's Power in the Darkness. And yeah, it did really well. It played a lot on the radio, and people are aware of the song. And we did a great
And what was
tour.
the mood like as a touring band?
It was
I
good.
mean,
It was good. I mean, it's weird to think of it now, but there wasn't a lot of. I met these musicians and I thought these are great guys to record with. But the mood was good. I mean, it was 1990. Nelson Mandela had just been released and things were changing. I would say the mood in 1986, when I made that album, The Killing Floor, was a lot different. Yeah, so there was quite a lag between recording, Waiting for the Dawn, and it actually being released. It was like a year lag.
So things had changed over that time. Before, I mean, you're saying that the temperature changes from when you record it to when you release it.
Yeah, the temperature changed dramatically in South Africa from 1988 to 1989.
And can you explain explain a little bit what that means? How did it change?
Well, the tension in the streets went down. In 88, there were those Caspers and people, and I mean, it was the violence. So there was a lull. And then in the early 90s, there was a lot of that street violence in Johannesburg. And if I remember correctly, at the time, it was between Inkatha, and there was a lot of violence around the times when they were negotiating the constitution.
And just in terms of because of the subject matter that you're singing about, were you an activist, or like how are you expressing yourself musically? Was it accidental? Was it just expressing the mood?
I wasn't an activist, but politics just pervaded everybody's life. I mean, it was just every single day. You would see it in the streets, and the temperature was really hot. And if you were making an album, I mean, if you were writing songs, that just came into the songs. It just was, you couldn't get away from it.
Who were your contemporaries, and who were you playing around with, and who else was gigging around the same time?
Well, the end of the 80s, when we were in All Right Radio, we opened for Jaluka, and then Jaluka changed into Savuka. Yeah, that was really cool. And yeah, in that switchover phase, the Jaluka drummer, Derek De Beer, was our drummer for a tour. Other bands that you would remember, Elemental, Tim Parr's band. There was a band called the Radio Rats, Evoid.
I remember Radio Rats and Evoid, yeah.
Yeah. That was the end of the 80s. And yeah, that was about that. That was it. Yeah.
What made you hang up the boxing gloves eventually?
Well, Democracy came to South Africa, and if you listen to the album Horizon, there's one track which I'm really proud of called The River Flowing, which is basically, I wrote when I was, the images of people standing in rural KwaZulu-Natal, just those snaking lines of people that stood for hours, 24 hours, waiting to vote. And it was just, that's the song, The River's Flowing, So I could write that song, peace had come to South Africa, democracy had come to South Africa, everybody had a voice for once. And yeah, that was it, 94.
And Since you stopped releasing albums and this one, what have you been up to?
You mean between 2008 and 2020, the 12 years?
Yes.
Just living my life and raising my kids and getting them educated and writing songs.
Oh,
I
cool.
write
So you've been writing.
yeah, I write songs all the time. And the more you write, the more you can throw away. And like the one song "Crazy River" I wrote in 2010 after going down for 3 weeks down the Grand Canyon on a rafting trip with some buddies. So it's an old song. And then "Train Don't Run" I wrote 2 months before we went into the studio. So you never really know when a good song's going to come along.
Cool. I have to ask, I'm sure you have been asked this a million times about working with Dave Stewart and Brian May, because that
Yeah,
is unbelievable.
yeah. That was interesting way that turned out. We'd made the album Beyond the Blue with a great band, Anton Fig, who's from Cape Town, and Blondie Chaplin, who's from Natal, South Africans, and Keith Lenton, also a South African, and a guitarist friend of Kevin, Pat Thrall. And right after that album, Pat got to start working with Dave Stewart as an engineer. And he called me up. It was probably 6 months after we made the album. And he said, "Steve, you won't believe this, but we're coming to Cape Town to kind of do a scouting trip. And can you organize a studio so that we can maybe, record with some people, some local people, and Dave Stewart's coming out, and can you just organize everything for us?" I said, "Yeah, sure. I'll organize the studio where I've recorded quite a bit, UCA Studios." And they came out. Dave Stewart, it was his idea. He'd been, the 46664 idea was he had been approached by the late Joe Strummer who had written the song on Nelson Mandela's, around Nelson Mandela's prison number. And they kind of took the concept further and said, let's do a whole album and a concert in South Africa to raise funds and awareness in the fight against AIDS. So he came out on a scouting trip, and Brian May and Roger Taylor then said to Dave they'd like to be involved, and because it's a project that they think it would be great, and he said sure. Dave Stewart's a very creative guy with keyboards and keyboard riffs, and he just wrote this riff, and Brian May just laid down that Brian May guitar thing. And anyway, I left. They were just fooling around, and I left that night, and Pat called me the next day, and he said, "Man, you won't believe it, you lucked out." So I said, "Well, what do you mean, Pat?" So he said, "Well, that song that you were working on with, they just fooling around, after you left, they really worked on it, and it's going to be a track, it's going to be a song." I'm like, cool, because it was just really a riff,
bananas.
Yeah. And then Dave Stewart doesn't write lyrics, so I said to him, "Well, do you mind if I'll write the lyrics if you want?" He said, "Yeah, sure." But he said, "Try and write something that has some African words as well." And that was the song Amandla. And I wrote the verses, and they got somebody in to sing like a guide vocal. And then he took it away, and when he went to the States, he re-recorded the vocals with Anastasia, and she rewrote some of the verses. So that's why it ends up a collaboration of myself and Dave Stewart and Brian May and Anastasia. That was luck. It was a total luck that I was just in the room. That's all.
I mean, you were just in the room with Dave Stewart and Brian May.
It's just the luck that I got in the room, yeah.
And what were they like as people? And I mean,
well, Dave Stewart's very intense and very smart and very musical. And Brian May is a lot more laid back and a real gentleman, and also very smart. And the highlight was I got to play that guitar that he made.
Come on. Come on.
You know that guitar?
Of course. The red homemade guitar that he plays with the coin.
Yeah. And you know that the neck is their mantelpiece.
What do you mean it's their mantelpiece? What does that mean?
You know the piece of wood above a fireplace? The mantelpiece?
Yes. Oh, the neck is a mantelpiece. Is that what you're saying?
He and his father took the mantelpiece out and made the guitar neck. And the whammy bar is his mother's knitting needle. They made that guitar. They made the pickups. He and his father.
I mean, that's a legendary guitar you got your muddy fingers on.
Yeah. He said, do you want to play it? I said, yeah, sure.
That's incredible. Is that a photo? Did you get any photos of that by any chance?
Yeah, I have a video clip of it. I didn't know, but Murray Anderson, the owner of the studio, he sent it to me a little while ago. He said, Steve, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but this is you playing Brian May's guitar. I said, oh, cool.
I would love if you'd be willing, if you send me that clip, I'll tack it onto the end of this video so people can watch it at the end.
Okay, I'll have to look at my phone. If not, I'm sure Murray's got it.
How does it play? I mean, it obviously sounds great, but it must be clunky to play. Or, I mean, has it been modified 50 times, or is it just?
No.
Do you think
it's just like they made it? And when he picks it up, that sound comes out through a Vox AC30.
Through lots of Vox AC30s, you mean?
No, just one.
Oh, one. I thought he's like has to have like 5 minimum.
Well, I don't know. I know he just had one that was just
Amazing.
on 10 and with a treble boost and no pedals, but it comes out of his finger.
That.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You know, he has a doctorate in astrophysics.
Yeah.
No, he's a very nice person.
Incredible. And you've got a publishing credit with him.
Yeah, I forgot about it. But it's cool.
Very cool.
And he was sweet because when they came back to do the concert. And then it was hectic. There was just, there were just stars everywhere. It was.
I was at that concert. My band performed at that concert.
Really?
Yeah, it was mental. I think we played at 1 PM. We were one of the early bands. But I found recently a video that I had taken on my Nokia phone. I don't know if you remember this. Like when Madiba came out and did a speech, we were all on a all guests were on a revolving stage, and then the stage revolved behind them. And I've got the video. I was taking a video as we went around that revolving thing to see all the people, and we were standing behind Madiba. Were you on that stage too?
Yeah, so Brian May was sweet to say, yeah, Steve, you're going to come on the stage for your song. So for that song,
you played it for that song.
Yeah, I played acoustic guitar. I just strummed the guitar. But my 2 minutes of fame, and my buddy, I've never seen the footage, but I know Pat Thrall, who had come for the show, and he was backstage videoing just before we went on, and I was squashed. There was a whole line of people to get onto the stage. It was like, on that song, it was like Bono, Edge, Youssou N'Dour, Peter Gabriel, Beyonce, Anastasia.
I remember that.
As luck would have it, I was squashed between Beyonce and Anastasia.
Wow.
Yeah, that was great. So I've never seen it, but I know Pat did video us because he thought it was hilarious.
You got some great stories there. And then the other one that I know, you got to tell me if I'm missing anything, because the other one that you met or played with was Rodriguez.
Yeah, we were his band.
Oh, and you played as his band. That's right.
Yeah. But I mean, it was the same studio, UCA Studios. It's like I go back to UCA. So it was the same story. We had the third Big Sky album had come out, Going Down with Mr. Green. It was doing quite well. It was getting radio play. And this promoter decided, the Swedish guy, Magnus Eriksson, had decided that he's going to promote the tour here in South Africa. And he got a local promoter, Rainbow Productions, who my publicist knew, and they phoned me up to say, listen, we want to do this show with Rodriguez. We want to bring Rodriguez to South Africa. But there's only one problem. I said, what's that? He said, well, he hasn't played guitar for like 10 years. He doesn't have a guitar, and he doesn't have a band. So I said, well, that's not a problem. We all know his music, and we'll be his band. So they said, cool. Well, then you do the first half of the show, and then the second half, so it'll be Big Sky and Rodriguez, which it was.
That's amazing. And I have heard lots of mixed stories about him when he was out here, because I think he came twice, but the first time he had a heavy drinking problem, or he was a bit of a mess.
Yeah. So he arrived from the United States without a guitar, and he came to that same studio, UCA Studios, in the afternoon, and we'd been rehearsing the band, and we bought him a guitar, and we met him there, and we rehearsed with him, and actually taught him some of his songs, because he had, you know, he hadn't played, and you know, he'd been working various jobs. You know, he hadn't been in the music business for 10 or 15 years. And he was a rehabilitated alcoholic.
Mm.
And the pressure of that tour, I mean, he never realized, I mean, the media frenzy when he arrived here, I mean, every single journalist wanted to see him. And
I mean, it's one of the greatest stories of South African music history, the discovery of.
Yeah. And the show sold out like in minutes. And I mean, he could not believe it. And I mean, he flew his family out here so they could see that he was a musician, you know, that they could witness.
They didn't even know.
No. Well, you know, they knew he'd made albums that didn't sell, and that was that. And I mean, here he was like the Beatles.
It really is one of the most unbelievable stories ever.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the greatest scams ever pulled.
Well, you know, the riff of da 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 da, you know, I wonder.
Yeah.
I mean, the place was going nuts, and Graham Curry, the bass player, he played that riff like 40 times before Rodriguez would come onto the stage. In the end, they just pushed him onto the stage, and the place just erupted.
And was he appreciative, or was it just too much for him? What was it like? What was the experience?
I think it was too much for him.
Mm.
I think he's quite a fragile character.
And where is he now? Do you know?
So he's touring, but you know, his health has really suffered because he's had a life of alcoholism. And you know, he on the tour that he came out here after the movie won the Oscars Best Documentary, Willem, the guitarist I play with, again was the guitarist. And you know, his eyesight has been affected. He can hardly see from alcohol abuse, and you know, he doesn't walk well. His health has really suffered. So he's a great songwriter and a great talent, but the part lacking was the focus to keep writing stuff and, you know, dedicate himself to his craft, I think.
Well, I wonder what would have happened if, I mean, who could have known if he had been notified that he was during his heyday here?
Yes.
And he could have had a career. But I mean, again, he might have been dead. If he had an alcohol problem, or probably might have killed him.
Yeah, and so it's just a lot of elements in anything to be successful. And a big part of it is showing up every day and being ready to do the job. And I think I would say he doesn't lack in the talent department, but he's a bit lacking in that department.
Where have you got your musical discipline from? Because you seem like you are a disciplined songwriter. You've got all the hallmarks where that's not easy for a lot of people.
I've always found it really easy to write songs. And when I first picked up the guitar and got a chord book and learned some chords, I found it easier to write a song. Well, my mind just said, why don't you just write a song? Why bother working out these other songs? They seem really hard to work out. Just make up your own one. And it's always just been like that. And my brother would always say, you can't play anything. Why don't you play a song? I said, I am playing songs. He said, well, I don't. I said, well, they're my songs. He's like, oh, that's lame.
I identify so strongly because I got kicked out of 3 music schools when I was a kid because they would make me go home and practice these pieces. And when I would come back and say, hey, check, I made up this song. And they'd go, yeah, that's great. But now play the thing you're supposed to play. And I couldn't. I just wanted to make stuff.
Yeah. So it's interesting how people are wired. I played in a band with a guitarist who could listen to any piece of music once, or as it was going down, and replicate it to the finest nuance. He didn't have to work it out; he just heard it and played it. And I mean, it's a real skill, and you're just wired like that. But he couldn't write a song. So people are just different.
Who are your idol songwriters? Obviously, Dylan and Springsteen. You mentioned them both already.
Yeah, Johnny Cash.
Cool.
Brilliant. I mean, what a songwriter. Yeah.
What?
He's one of the greatest, Johnny Cash. I think John Hyatt's a really good songwriter.
Did you ever hear? Sorry. Did you? On Johnny Cash. Did you ever hear the song, the album he did with the Rick Rubin album of covers, where he covered other people? I mean, just the ability to interpret other songs is
the 9 Inch Nails.
The Hurt thing is one of the great, and the music video makes you want to cry. It's one of the greatest interpretations of any song ever.
Yeah,
it's John Hyatt. Yeah.
And it was interesting when Rick Rubin said to Tom Petty, Johnny Cash doesn't have a record deal. I'm thinking of signing him. Should I sign him? Tom Petty's like, it's Johnny Cash. Are you kidding? Of course, sign
him. This is the thing. What do you feel about in South Africa? We've got quite a few Johnny Cashes stomping around. There's one I'm talking to right now, and we don't look after our stars. Like, again, we have amazing they still rock. Some of these guys are. Oh, I feel like I'm babbling, but I had this one experience where it was quite a long time ago, but I was working. It really set me off on a whole trajectory working with all the sort of legends of South Africa. I was working as the music director for the Psalmers.
Yes.
And I'd done something. I was working with I think it was the Parlor Tones and then Prime Circle and some of the hip hop artists. And then for the Lifetime Achievement Awards, I got to work with Stimela. And it was where Ray Peary was still alive, Isaac was still alive, a couple of the other members. The musicianship, I suddenly went I'm in a different universe here. This is insane.
Oh, yeah.
And then starting to get my hands dirty with Vusi Maklasel and these guys. But why we don't take care of our guys here, and we still have some of the greatest talent on the planet.
Yeah, if you think, Pakiti Kamala, I mean, he's world renowned.
Yeah,
but it took him to go. It took Graceland and moving to New York. His talent was the same here as there. But you're right. Somebody like McCoy, world class. And Johnny Clegg.
Yeah.
It took France to put him on the map.
Yeah.
They identified his talent, and
I think he sold 1 million units in France.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the most riveting performances I've ever seen was Johnny Clegg at that concert at Greenpoint sing Asimbonanga to Nelson Mandela.
Wow.
It was incredible. And I mean, I think he blew Peter Gabriel or whoever away. He was incredible. A really, really great talent, a great songwriter, a great person.
Yeah.
And we didn't revere him like Johnny Cash or Bob Dylan are revered in the United States. But somebody like Johnny Clegg is of that level.
100%.
He gets the French award, the Legion of Honor or whatever it is. But I don't think we take artists that seriously in South Africa.
Do you think because, I mean, I don't know, I'm just speculating, we have bigger problems? And I mean, people don't realize how important the arts are to the psyche, the mental health, the sort of, good vibes of a country. We don't recognize it. So we've got bigger problems to solve. So we don't care about the arts.
I think it's because, I think you're right. We have bigger problems just in practical terms of housing and streets and things. But the arts really are the fabric of a society, and they knit the society together. A wonderful experience was the concert in 1985, which is one of the first and biggest multiracial concert in South Africa, called the Concert in the Park. It was in January, February.
I've got the record somewhere. It's the
but it turned out it was a free concert to raise funds for Operation Hunger, to feed hungry kids. And 110,000 people came to Ellis Park. I mean, there were people sitting on the roof of Ellis Park, on the roof. And Jaluka played. It was incredible. Lucky Dubé. And you just saw the healing power of music. Everybody. And that was in 85, way before democracy, nearly 10 years before democracy. And everybody was one in that stadium through the power of music. It was riveting.
Couldn't do that today. I mean, COVID aside.
Yeah.
You still couldn't do that. We don't.
Yeah.
I mean, history, very weird, very interesting. I mean, what do you think of? I mean, I'm going on a random tangent here, but Paul Simon, who was on that concert too, right?
No, but he came right around that time, like a month before. And the same person who organized the concert, Hilton Rosenthal, and Denzel Fiegelson, who's now like the head of Apple Music or something.
Oh, yes, I know Denzel.
Yeah. He was the backstage guy.
That's interesting.
He was the stage manager at Concert in the Park. Ask him about it.
I will ask him that. I didn't know.
I'm
writing that down.
Yeah. He was Hilton Rosenthal's assistant.
What do you think? Paul Simon got raked over the coals by. There's a brilliant YouTube video about it by Dali Tambo. It's on YouTube. You should check it out. And it's kind of years later where he says, it's great that you came and sort of did this collaboration, but you were asked by the ANC not to come here. Like it was a bad time. And basically, fuck you. You shouldn't have come.
Yeah. Well, there was the cultural boycott in place.
Right.
And, it was the whole thing about, Steven Van Zandt had done Sun City, and the cultural boycott did put pressure on the South African government to change. So he
undermined or just ignored?
I would say he ignored. I don't think him coming here, I think he just did what he wanted to do.
He wanted to make some music and came in and did it.
Yeah.
I think that's the same.
Yeah, he phoned up Hilton and said, can you arrange a studio and some musicians, and anybody wants to come in, just come in and we'll cut some tracks. I mean, it's a brilliant album.
Brilliant. You'll appreciate this. I have a studio in Joburg. And we have, first we have like a very beautiful 1984 SSL.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
But what we are busy rack mounting is we have the what was the console? The Harrison. We have the
Yeah.
Graceland Harrison console.
No.
It that was taken to pieces and left in a garage. The frame has been lost, but we've taken the channels and we're busy rack mounting them for the drums. So we're going to have the Graceland Harrison channels rack mounted for drum recordings, and then into the SSL. That's what we're busy doing at the moment.
Well, that Concert in the Park album was mixed on that Harrison console at Downtown.
The same
Studios.
one?
Yeah. Downtown Studios. Yeah.
Huh. Cool. Well, then I'll rack mount them.
I saw that console. Yeah. When it was still working.
No, it still works. I've got it in a box. I'll tell you one thing. It's in Joburg, but I kept one channel. Hang on. I've never taken this. I'm going to get it out for you.
Awesome.
It's up there. Hang on.
Cool.
I kept one channel back for no reason except to maybe show you one day. I'll show it to you now. Hold on.
I love this stuff. Yeah, I know it. Very interesting, hey? Yeah. That is so cool. How did you track it down? Nice.
Hold on, I'm going to put it down gently before I answer you, because it'll be hilarious if I like drop it or something at this particular point after all it's been through. Stay. Do you know the producer Brian O'Shea?
Yeah.
He owns it. And he stopped working. No, Brian O'Shea. He he did like in the 90s. He was sort of Sugar Drive, Amersham. He was a big rock producer back in the 90s.
Okay.
He did Seether. He was Seether. He did their big album. Anyway, he bought the desk. He had the desk. Then the story goes, he had it in a studio. Then something happened and they had to pack it away. And then the guy who had the frame died and they never found the frame. So the whole console, I've got the channels and the power supply. I've got everything except for the actual frame, got packed in a box. Then it got shipped to a container in Cape Town. And for a good 3 years, I was asking him, please, can I like pick it up or have a look at it or check it out? Eventually, he gave me the address. I rocked up in this crazy like container. These guys told me, yeah, they had borrowed the stuff from him like 8 years ago. It's been sitting in here. They didn't know what was in there. And I just took all the boxes, drove it to Joburg, and that's where it is now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
And it's abracadabra.
And have you got to like service it and all that?
We're not there yet. It's still literally in the box. We're busy building a rack mount for it because it's not. Yeah, it's and we've had a few people offer to restore the whole desk back to normal, but they want to kind of take it. They want to own it at the same time, which is not going to happen. So we're gonna spend a couple. We got all this stuff really up and running right before COVID, and then it all got onto pause. Now things are opening. We're about to get into revamping the studio and get it all rock and roll.
That's
it's gonna be nice. Yeah, you need some history in a studio,
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of old consoles. I mean, I love the Neve consoles.
Well, you're welcome to come record at no cost anytime. If you're ever in Joburg and you just want to come fiddle.
Oh, absolutely. Please.
Yeah.
It's so great.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. And here's I'm going on a sales pitch now, but we built this culture hub in Joburg. This has been like a lifelong dream for us that we launched about 2 or 3 years ago. I think I told you about it maybe.
Yeah.
And it's free. Like, well, we have it's commercialized. We have a producer in there and they hire the studio out, but for young emerging engineers, producers and artists, it's free. And part of the reason we wanted the SSL in there and gear like this is because you want people to get there's no demand for this stuff anymore, but you want people to experience that feeling of touching the knobs and hearing that sound. And you know who I had in there was Vusi Khumalo.
Oh, really?
Like, he came into the session, and I'll tell you this, Vusi Khumalo playing the drums, because he's got that magic touch.
Yeah.
where he just like tunes stuff on and plays.
Yeah.
Vusi Khumalo playing through the SSL with nothing, like all no EQ, no nothing. It sounds like it was straight off of like Michael Jackson's "Off the
Yeah.
Wall,"
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. It's like that. That's how drummers are. It's where they hit the drum on the skin. Yeah.
Yeah, because a great drummer you can spend 3 days trying to get a good sound out of, but those special drummers, they come in
Straight
and they
away.
just know how to play.
Yeah. Straight away. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they also know how to tune drums properly.
Well, that's I said that now, but only because someone else said it. Might have been Kevin,
Mm.
because that's what I didn't realize is that when Vusi came in, we did this quick session with him, like 20 minutes. But I'm thinking back, he spent the first 10 minutes tuning the kit that we'd had in
Yeah.
there, and that's obviously made all the difference.
Yeah, because I mean the drums are notes.
Yeah.
So they're part of the music. And obviously percussive. But the great drummers, it's where they hit on the skin, you know, it's within millimeters. They hit the same spot every time. And you know, they know where to hit in different places to make different sounds. There's a lot going on for a drummer.
Who's your favorite drummer in South Africa?
South Africa.
If you have one. Or I'll give you this, I'll give you an easy way out. Or a guitar player.
My favorite drummer in South Africa, I would say, is Godfrey Mcinga, who I played with on Waiting for the Dawn. He has great feel. I really like his playing a lot. Yeah. Who else? South African drummer is probably Anton Fig, who's from South Africa. Yeah.
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 Guitar players, do you listen to like Dan Patlansky and those guys?
I would much rather go for somebody. I mean, I love the way Vusi Mashashera plays guitar.
Oh, he's amazing.
Yeah. And his voice, and it's just, you know, it's his whole personality. It just comes through the music. It's like guitar, voice. It's all like just one thing. And such a beautiful person.
He is one of my favorite people. I'm gonna send you something after this just for you.
Oh, cool.
One of my proudest things I ever did, but it was a testament to Vusi, is that on one of our albums we did a collab with him. And as these things happen in my mind, I'd written this Motown song, but by the time it was like fully formed with the band, it didn't sound anything like it. It was a proper like crazy rock song. And that's why I'd invited Vusi in, because Vusi and I had a history of like not arguing, but like sort of what do you call it when two sword fighters are? We're like, yeah, we're sparring around like soul music and stuff. So I thought I'd invited him onto the soul track, but instead I'd invited him into this rock track, and he turned into a rock singer. Like
really?
It was insane. His vocal delivery on this song is fucking crazy. It's crazy.
Wow. That's so cool.
I want to send that to you just so you know.
Oh, thanks. I'd love to.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, I got 2 more questions for you, and then I will let you go back to your life.
Okay.
The first one is, can you tell me a bit about you? I've never met you before other than the phone calls we've had.
Yeah.
Your personality is very intriguing to me, as well as your musical career. Can you tell me a bit about your parents and how you grew up?
Very interesting. And I think elements of Train Don't Run are in my ancestors are in it. My father came from a small Karoo town called Calvinia up in the Northern Cape, and he told me that as a schoolboy he played ukulele in like a band with concertina and banjo and ukulele as a schoolboy, and his mother was musical, and so that's the one side of my family. who come from the kind of Karoo Plains, and then on my mother's side of the family, they have Scottish heritage. So I probably get musicality from the Scottish side and the Karoo side. Yeah.
So you had musical parents.
Well, I never heard my dad play, but he told me that he played at school and then he just stopped. It was tough times then. After school, it was the Depression, and then he went to the Second World War, and then he was in a prison camp, and then, music was like you had to first make a living. It wasn't, it was like there's no time for making music. So I think he just, but he did actually then I remember when I was at school, he started taking piano lessons. So he was musical. But I think he focused on, making a living and raising his family.
And so how did you find music then? Were they encouraging?
They weren't against it, but I wouldn't say that, we were definitely not a family where there was just music all the time. I was the outlier amongst my siblings. So my brother had guitar lessons, and he had this gallow tone guitar, which is
I know those guitars.
Yeah, you know the one, and it's very weird. There's a picture of John Lennon with a gallow tone guitar. They were made in South Africa and exported to the UK because they were
I did not know that. I've just seen them pop up, and they just
So
they've got the Gallo name in them.
Yeah, there's this early picture of John Lennon as a 15-year-old with the gallow tone, and there's a very early picture of Jimmy Page with the gallow tone, both with their first guitars. So my brother had a gallow tone that he bought, I think my parents bought for him in 1963. And he had kind of lessons for a few months or a year playing stuff like, I don't know, like Moon River or Wooden Heart or songs like that. And then it was lying around, and I'd taken piano at school, and then I saw the guitar and I got a chord book and started writing songs. And it was just, I was attracted to it. And then, formed a band at school with other guys, and off we went. I mean, it was crazy. We formed a band, and then we'd play stuff like Blood, Sweat, and Tears. But I mean, we didn't know what we were doing.
And what were you listening to?
Oh, wow.
When you first started?
Well, I tell you, I've just been thinking about this stuff. My dad brought a record home in 1959 called Dwayne Eddy, Have Twangy Guitar and We'll Travel. And it's that spooky acoustic, electric Gretsch sound, that stuff. And I realized how imprinted that was in me. And I can remember in the early 60s hearing Fats Domino sing Blueberry Hill. And then Elvis and Cliff were coming through, and then obviously the Beatles, and I would buy the 7 singles of Help or Satisfaction. And then there was a period, and obviously I bought all the Beatles albums. I bought more Beatles albums than Stones albums. And then it was just like, man, Blonde on Blonde came out, and Janis Joplin and Zeppelin 1 and 2 came out, and there was just like a year or two, it was just insane stuff coming. I mean, and it was Traffic, Clapton, all that stuff. And that was
awesome.
Yeah, it's like every week one of those classic albums would come out. It's like, oh, there's a new
they weren't classic. They were new albums.
Yeah. You just go down and go, it's the White Album, great. Or Led Zeppelin 2. I mean, I remember putting the speakers on my ears and just like, because they panned the guitars and a whole lot of love, and it was just insane.
Are you surprised at all now that how those are still the albums? Like those are still the definitive albums of all time, or not really?
Well, I suppose you couldn't see the future then, so you just thought this is the benchmark, and it will always be this great. But just stayed the benchmark, and it didn't. It definitely didn't get greater.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was just like, that's what's coming out. But what was so cool at that stage, I was like 13 or 14. I think your mind is so open. And to have that music coming in at you week after week was great.
Yeah,
really
I mean,
well.
I know that I discovered the Beatles when I was 13, which would have been 19, was a 90, like early 1990s.
Yeah.
And it blew my fucking head off. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
all I obsessed about for many, many years to come after that. I mean, that you just don't get better.
But what was so cool is like you could wait just like 6 months or 9 months and they'd bring out another album.
Oh yeah, I didn't get that. I had them all they were in a little bread bin box set.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's one.
And
Yeah.
they weren't going to bring out any more.
No. But there was such great stuff that came out. Wow.
Are there artists that are young and like hip at the moment that you think like that those guys they got it?
There are lots of great artists. And I probably regard them differently because my mind is different now. I'm not as open as I was as a 13-year-old. But you know, if you listen to an artist like Bon Iver, he's a really great songwriter
He is
and
incredible.
artist. And I can definitely recognize that he's a great talent, but it doesn't blow me away like those albums blew me away in the 60s or the late 60s. But I think that's because my mind was different then. And I think if I was 14, listened to Bon Iver, it would blow me away in the same way.
Cool.
So I'm much more intellectually recognize his talent, but it doesn't just like blow my mind like those others do. So I don't know if the others were better or not.
Well, also they were breaking new ground. You know, that's the other thing of what they were doing. They were changing production. You know, they were trying things out that kind of everything's been tried now. So you've got one weapon, and that is writing great songs. You don't have the ability to really push production to the edge of the earth, or maybe you do.
Yeah. I think the production was better in the 50s and 60s because it was just production was all about people playing in the room properly. I mean,
right.
You know, you listen to the Beatles, they were singing everything live, harmonies live, many guitar parts, all just going down, unthought of, in the moment, you know. And the recordings, Miles Davis in the 50s, I mean, it's just like go in, set up the mics in a great room, okay, play.
Well, also, I mean, I often think back to James Brown's band, like probably the greatest band of all time. Why? Because they were playing 7 days a week, 3 gigs a day.
Exactly.
Like 3 gigs a day.
Yeah.
7 days a week. When they went into the studio, they just sat there and played.
They're ready. Yeah. It's really about that because recording is just really a microphone capturing the performance. You know,
but
that's
it's different now because you've got all these tools. So you're like, ugh, I can't be bothered. I'll just lay down the drum track, then I'll fix it.
Fix it in the mix. No, that's
not
the way. That's not the recording 101.
What should I do? Should I play real bass or MIDI bass to see how I feel?
No. So that's all that. It's when great music is when nobody's thinking, they're just reacting. And when you have great artists reacting to each other, and that's why the 4 Beatles together are a different ball game to the 4 Beatles separately. You know, in the studio while they're playing, they're actually making jokes to each other musically. You know, they're getting off on each other, they're pushing each other, they're laughing, not physically laughing, but you know, I always say that. Well, I don't always say, but you can, if you meet someone and they say he's a drummer, you can tell if he's a great drummer without hearing him play by his personality. You know, they're all a bit whacked, and because you can, it's drummers can really express their sense of humor on the kit. You know, they have a lot of power because they're controlling everything. You know, they can make jokes all the time, and someone like Ringo Starr and Charlie Watts have that down, and Keith Moon. You know, They're just big jokers, and you hear that humor in the music, and not silly humor, but you hear that this is not a serious business. This is fun. We're making music. We're having fun. We're getting off on doing this.
Steve, it's been really awesome to chat
Yeah,
to
it
you.
was fun.
I have one generic question that I ask everyone, but I kind of think it's unfair because you've already actually done this for me.
Okay.
But the question that I ask everyone is, now that you know how the show kind of operates, can you suggest someone that you think would be a good guest? But you already introduced me to Kevin, so I think that your job's kind of done there. But
Yeah.
if you want to think about someone else, can I tell you who I'm seeing tomorrow? Is
Yes.
David Kramer.
Yeah. He would be a good guest. He was actually on the tip of my tongue.
Mm.
David. I often bump into him in the street around here, and
Are you mates with him?
yeah, we played in a folk club on the same bill in
Right.
1976 in Stellenbosch.
I want from you a question that I can ask David that he won't see coming. That only you, could only have come from you.
Okay, ask him. Ask him where he bought his dobro guitar.
His dobro.
Yeah, and what year?
Why
What
will it,
city? What city and what year? Because I can remember when he bought it. He
and what's
bought
the
it.
answer?
He bought it in New York City,
New York.
and I don't know if it was late 1981 or early 1982. But he visited New York and he got a dobro there, and that's
And
that.
how
Yeah,
did you were you
that's
with
that
him at the time?
guitar. No, but we knew each other, and then we had a common friend. And I wasn't with him when he bought it, but I knew he'd bought it because it was quite a special thing. You couldn't get like a dobro here. And I used that dobro. And then you can ask him, what rock song has your dobro been on?
Cool. I love it.
The answer is The Killing Floor by All Night Radio. Because we went and borrowed it from him.
Nice.
And we went there, we drove up to his house. He lived in Oranjezig then, and we got it. And we took it down to the studio, and the guitarist of our band, Nico Berger, played the rhythm riff on the dobro, and Tim Parr of Elemental played the electric riff on the track The Killing Floor, the Chester Burnett song.
I love it.
That's a good question for David.
It's a great question. And the other thing that annoys me, Steve, is that there's
I don't
so
think
many
I get the
stories
answer.
of yours that are still unearthed. I need to crawl into your brain. I wish I knew more. Like you
Oh,
have
man.
such great stories. You connected to everyone.
Well, I'll tell you, a good story is the last time I saw Rodriguez, he was standing on the Durban waterfront, you know, that main drag in Durban, in his
Yes.
cowboy boots and underpants.
Just his underpants.
And cowboy boots.
A bottle of beer in his hand, or just
Yeah.
shame. I mean, I laugh, but I feel like fuck that poor dude. Jeez.
Yeah, I never realized how powerful a drug alcohol is until I saw that tour.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I remember I saw him at he was at the Armchair Theater, which is a tiny little thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember, and I thought I'd imagined it, so it was good to hear from you. Actually, I remember my memory was that he kind of had bodyguards who was stopping him from drinking,
Mm.
and so they were like taking things away from him. They were quite mean to him. And then while he was playing, he was asking the audience for drinks, and then
Oh,
someone would
wow.
hand him a beer, and he would just zip. You know, when someone drinks an entire beer in like 3 seconds, you go like, "Whoa, that's someone." Yeah.
I saw that. That's when I realized what a powerful drug alcohol is, because after that first rehearsal that he came to South Africa, he was clean and he'd been in rehab and Alcoholics Anonymous and all that. And after the rehearsal, the promoter had arranged a little cocktail party.
Mm.
And there was wine there. And I saw his hand go out and take that glass of wine. It was going to be his first drink in many years, and he basically inhaled it.
Do you know what?
And
It
he
wasn't beer. It was
inhaled,
wine. You're right.
and he
I saw him down glasses of wine.
and he then inhaled a bottle of wine in about 20, and that was it.
Mm.
And it was scary to see. You hear of heroin as a powerful drug, but that's when I realized that alcohol is a very powerful drug as well.
Mr. Louw,
not alcohol.
Headlight Dreams doing great stuff. It's an unbelievable album.
Thanks.
I'm very glad to have met you. I'm super happy
Likewise.
to have spoken to you.
That was so great. It was such fun.
It's fun. Hey, I mean, the vibe of this thing is there's no agenda. I've got no questions.
Yeah,
just
cool.
Drink whiskey and speak to people you think is cool.
Yeah. Did you enjoy talking to Kevin? Was that great?
I loved it. Kevin Shirley describes you as a national treasure.
Oh, wow.
And I love that. And I wanted you to respond to that.
All I can say is, wow, that's the sweetest thing anybody's ever said about me.
He's right.
Boy, you just made my day. Wow, you really, I mean, that is, I didn't expect you to say that. Yeah. Well, wow,
I look forward to you hearing the interview because when I mentioned your name, he just had so many amazing things to say. And
wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Because we're close friends. I didn't think you'd say that. So it really made me feel good now. Well,
great.
It will for a long time. So thanks for telling me.
I'm happy that I did. Very professional of me to remember it right before the end.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, super cool.
I won't tell him that you told me. Well, I suppose it's going to be in his interview when it gets.
Good luck with everything, Tom. and I really appreciate your time, and I've loved chatting to you.
Likewise, it was such fun, and we must get together. Cool. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Yeah,
have a lovely evening.
You too. Thanks, eh?
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.